Welcome to the Black Bibliophile podcast. The Black Bibliophile is a podcast where I, Jazz, read and talk about popular and little-known books, comics, zines, and authors. To quote Haruki Murakami, if you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. And with that, let's start the show. Welcome back to the Black Bibliophile podcast. It's me, your host, Jazz. This week, we are still talking about romance novels, and we'll be talking about The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory, Sugar Town by Hazel Newlevant, Kiss Number 8 by Colleen A.F. Venable, and Ellen T. Crenshaw. We'll be, chatting about Audre Lorde and a little bit about Liz Suburbia's egg cream. So, yeah, let's hop into the show. So the two books you should check out this week. The first book is Sugar Town by Hazel Newlevant. A summary of Sugar Town is a bisexual polyamorous love story for the modern era. Hazel is already in a happy relationship when she meets Argent, a dominatrix who's sweet and tender outside of the bedroom. Sugar Town is a fun, colorful comic about a young woman's journey through the delights and disappointments of multiple lovers. So this book I picked up, I met Hazel last year at Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and they were super nice and super chill. And the first of the books I've read from them were the anthology they put together, the Comics for Choice anthology, which is about abortion, and a bunch of creators got together and wrote about that, which is a really great anthology, and I recommend you guys check that out. I'll leave the link in the bio. But Sugar Town, I saw on their website that they had this book, and I love their art style, so I picked it up, and it's an amazing story that I believe is autobiographical. I don't want to delve too deep into it, but I do think you guys should check it out. I'll leave a link to where you can pick up Sugar Town in the bio. And the second book that I recommend this week is Kiss Number 8, written by Colleen A.F. Venable and illustrated by Ellen T. Crenshaw. Mads is happy with her life. She goes to church with her family and minor league baseball games with her dad. She goofs off with her best friend Kat, and has thus far managed to avoid getting kissed by Adam, the boy next door. It's everything she hoped high school would be, until all of a sudden, it's not. Her dad is hiding something big, so big it could tear her family apart, and that's just the beginning of her problems. Madge is starting to figure out that she doesn't want to kiss Adam because the only person she wants to kiss is Kat. I picked up this book at C2E2 this year, and I fell in love with it immediately. Crenshaw's art style is mesmerizing, and the way Colleen writes, you're completely immersed in Mads' feelings and her life, and I think this is a great book for anybody who loves comics and anybody who loves queer stories. So definitely check out Kiss Number 8 and Sugar Town. So yeah, those are the two books you should check out. Now, this week's author spotlight is Audre Lorde, and let me give you a little bit of a background on her. She was born February 18th, 1934, and passed away November 17th, 1992. Lorde was an American writer, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist. As a poet, she is best known for her technical mastery and emotional expression, as well as her poems that express anger and outrage at civil and social injustices she observed throughout her life. Her poems and prose largely deal with issues related to civil rights, feminism, lesbianism, and the exploration of Black female identity. In relation to non-intersectional feminism in the United States, Lorde famously said, "Those of us who stand outside the circle of the society's definition of acceptable women, those of us who have been forged in the crucibles of difference, those of us who are poor, who are lesbians, who are Black, who are older know that survival is not an academic skill. It is learning how to make your differences and make them strengths. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. And this fact is only threatening to those women who still define their master's house as their only source of support. I chose her work because I've lived with Audre Lorde like my entire life. She's been a staple in my household since forever. And I recently am revisiting her work after I went to an event thrown by the Free Black Women's Library LA division. And I decided that I wanted to revisit her poetry, and I've been discovering a new appreciation for her work. Here are a couple books that I think you guys would like. The Black Unicorn, Between Ourselves, The Cancer Journals, From a Land Where Other People Live. If you want to check out any of her poetry, I'll leave links in the bio, and I'll also leave a couple of great links to her website and all the work she did as an activist and a little bit of back history on Audre Lorde. You can definitely pick up any of the books I just mentioned, Sugartown, Kiss Number 8, and any of Audre Lorde's books at your local bookshop or local comic shop. Just, try to support your local businesses, guys. It's really important. Also, support your libraries. If you guys can't afford to buy the books, I'm sure your libraries will have any of these in their circulation. You can also check the library apps I mentioned in the last episode, which I'll leave in the show notes. But yeah, check out all these books. And now, let's take a break. Bibliophile. This week we're continuing on our romance journey, and we're gonna go with Jasmine Guillory's second book, The Proposal, which is kind of but not technically a sequel to The Wedding Date. Let me read you a quick summary. When freelance writer Nicole Patterson goes to a Dodger game with her actor boyfriend, his man bun, and his bros, the last thing she expects is a scoreboard proposal. Saying no isn't the hard part. They've only been dating for 5 months, and he can't even spell her name correctly. The hard part is having to face a stadium full of disappointed fans. At the game with his sister, Carlos Ibarra comes to Nick's rescue and rushes her away from the camera crew. He's even there for her when the video goes viral and Nick's social media blows up in a bad way. Nick knows that in the wilds of LA, a handsome doctor like Carlos can't be looking for anything serious, so she embarks on an epic rebound with him, filled with food, fun, and fantastic sex. But when their glorified hookups start breaking the rules, one of them has to be smart enough to put on the brakes. So this is a sequel, kind of, to The Wedding Date. It's a sequel in the way that Carlos Ibarra, the male romantic lead in this book, is also the best friend of the male romantic lead in The Wedding Date. So we see him a couple times in that book, but we don't really go in depth with his character. Personally, I like The Proposal more than I liked The Wedding Date. Not saying that The Wedding Date isn't a good book. I really love that book, but I just liked the character of Nicole better. I feel like I identified with her more. Of course, she is a freelance writer and very independent and has a devilish sort of sense of humor. So I guess I saw myself in her a little bit, but yeah. But yes, I love this book a lot. And what really helped me love this book is I dream casted them in my head. So in my head, Nicole would be played by Gabrielle Union, And then Carlos Ibarra would be played by, what's his name? Oscar Isaacs. So the whole time I was imagining those two, and that would just be a dream team of a film if that ever happens. But let's get back to the book because I'm getting off track. So I came across this book again because The Nod was talking about Jasmine Guillory's books, and I was like, and I read The Wedding Date, and I was like, okay, this book is dope. And then I realized that there was another one, so I picked this one up too. I really enjoy the way Jasmine writes Black female main characters, especially Nick. Nick is very independent. She doesn't need any dude, and she's trying really hard to make sure that her life is how she wants it to be. And she doesn't want any outside influences. She doesn't want a dude to dictate her life. And she knows, like with her man bun ex, what's good for her. She was like, no, I'm not gonna marry this weird ass dude. And so she bails. I love the premise of it just opening up on this Dodger game, and she gets proposed to, and it's a hot mess, and she's trying to run away. She turns him down. It was hilarious and cringy all at the same time. So I don't know. I think it's a great book, and I love the chemistry between Carlos and Nicole. Their relationship is really natural and fluid. There's not any forced, weird, grandiose dates. They go to like a taco truck. They go to a bookstore. They hang out and watch movies at at Nick's apartment. It's a very chill, like kind of millennial date scene. Nobody's going on helicopter rides or fucking getaways to Palm Springs, which I know happen in real life, but let's be real. But yeah, so I think that Jasmine Guillory, again, has written an amazing book, and that it's actually better than The Wedding Date because I think it's more realistic. Like, Nick works in the gig economy. She is a freelance writer. She has to sit down and make sure she gets her articles and hits her certain amount of, jobs so she can pay her bills. She has a group of friends that are all hustling to make, their careers and their lives make sense. And the book doesn't quite focus on the romance. It feels like this one's more about Nick and her friends and Carlos and his family than it is about the two of them. It's more about how their already normal lives just combine into one life together. If that happens at the end, it happens, but spoiler alert, it happens, but it gets a little messy before then. I am excited to read Jasmine Guillory's next book, The Wedding Party, which I'm sure comes out this year. But yeah, The Proposal is a great book, and I think you guys would really dig it if you dug The Wedding Date. I feel like if you're like me, you'll like this book a little more. The book's themes are like love. They focus on each other's insecurities and how sometimes you have to release power in a relationship. Like, it's not all about who holds the power and more about just relaxing with one another. It's about trust, and a big part of that, this book is about family, whether it's chosen family like Nick and all her friends, or biological family like with Carlos and his sister and his cousins. I do like seeing myself reflected in these books. I had a couple favorite parts. I liked when Nick, of course, the opening when she got proposed to, even though it was cringy, it was actually pretty funny, and it showed you a lot about the character, and especially the part after when they go to the bar she texts her friends to meet her at a bar, and they all just drink their sorrows and drag him for being endlessly awful, her ex-boyfriend. And I also like the parts with Carlos and Nick on their dates, and I use like air quotes for dates because it's usually like they run into each other on the street and just hang out for the rest of the day, eating food and chatting and stuff. I love the food stuff in this book. That's really cool. The only thing I didn't like about this book was I didn't want it to end. So yeah, I hope one day they make this one into a movie, because again, my dream casting would make a very interesting film. Who doesn't want to watch Gabrielle Union and Oscar Isaacs, fall in love. Just saying. Anyways, yes, check out The Proposal and The Wedding Date if you're into Jasmine Guillory's books. They're really great Black women-led romance novels. You can probably get them at your local library or at your local bookstore. I do recommend checking out Libby and Hoopla because I know they're on that app because I checked before I recorded this podcast. So you can definitely check them out via that app, or you can just, go to your public library if you like holding physical books, which I do too, so don't feel weird. And yeah, let's move on to a brief moment in comics. This week, I have chosen Egg Cream by Liz Suburbia, which is the sequel to this episode's all about romance and sequels, but not really. Egg Cream isn't about romance, but it is the sequel to Liz Suburbia's book Sacred Heart, and it has a couple of sweet comics towards the end, but the first comic is the sequel to Sacred Heart. So let's read the summary. Serving up a delicious concoction of sweet comics chilled to frothy perfection, Liz Suburbia returns with a new annual collection, collecting the newest and best that she can dish out. We're talking Dog Dreams, Modern Day Saints, and the first installment of the ongoing feature, Sacred Heart Part 2, Living in the Future. So, I reread both Sacred Heart and Egg Cream for this episode, and of course, Sacred Heart's amazing. You guys should definitely check it out. But Egg Cream, I love the way it continues the story in a like after school special kind of way. So the framing of the story is, well, let's go back. Sacred Heart is about these kids who were left in a town after their parents mysteriously disappeared. We didn't know where they went. We just kind of had a feeling that it was a culty vibe, and the kids were left alone to rule themselves. So they were going to punk shows at their high school. They still went to school. There was a mini mart. It was a very post-apocalyptic Lord of the Flies type deal with these kids, but sprinkled punk all over that. And in this one, they're older now, and it's framed as like a Dateline special, like what happened to these kids and what happened to their families. So we get more of a history of the cult that the kids' parents were a part of and where the parents went. And we also figure out what happened to the kids after Sacred Heart, after the Great Flood came and washed out the entire town. I enjoyed the hell out of Sacred Heart Part 2 within the Egg Cream mini anthology. I think it's a great continuation of the original story, and you guys should really check out Sacred Heart if you haven't. I know that's on Hoopla because I just reread it on Hoopla. And I also loved the comics after Sacred Heart Part 2. They're just like Liz's dreams. They're just based on a couple of her dreams. And my favorite one is her dream about LeBron James being her husband and giving her sound advice. I enjoy the hell out of that comic, and it makes me laugh every time I read it. It's a really good. Liz's art is gorgeous. I love the line work and how she captures expressions, and you just feel immersed in her art style. So yes, please check out Egg Cream #1 by Liz Suburbia. But before you pick up Egg Cream #1 by Liz Suburbia, please go and check out or buy or pick up Sacred Heart by Liz Suburbia. Everything, all the names of all the books and comics I've mentioned in this podcast will be in the show notes, so don't worry. But yeah, check these books out. And now finally, we have reached the end of the show, our last segment, the Zine Corner. In the Zine Corner, I focus on zines, which are small booklets that are made by the creators usually. They're self-published, indie little magazines that usually have staples down the spines or they're sewn together. And yeah, they could have stories and everything. This one I'm focusing on is Melanie Gillman's zine, The Fishwife. I picked up their book at Calla, I believe, like a year and a half ago. Not this year's Calla, but the year before. And The Fishwife is about a woman who makes a pact with a mermaid to be her wife for a year. And if she still loves her a year later, the mermaid gets to take her to her children. So, yeah, the story, I love the fantasy aspect of the story. Melanie's pencils and coloring are amazing. They do a great job at capturing this fairy tale like atmosphere. There's a little bit of danger with the pact that the woman makes with the mermaid, and you feel like, this is interesting, but then they fall in love and it's adorable and beautiful. And yeah, Melanie's art is gorgeous. If you haven't heard of Melanie Gillman's books, you need to go check out their work. And yeah, you can get this zine, I believe, on their website, Melanie Gillman's website. I'm not sure. I picked it up from them myself when I went to Calla a couple years ago. And it's a beautiful story with beautiful, beautiful artwork. And yeah, check it out. So that's the end of the show. Let's wrap everything up here. You can get all the comics and books I've mentioned at your local comic shop, local library, or local bookstore. I will leave all the links down below in the show notes for you guys to check out and find any books you're interested in. You can follow me on Twitter at the Black Bibliophile. You can follow me on Facebook at the Black Bibliophile Podcast on Facebook. And you also can send any emails if you have any book recommendations, or if you have any comics recommendations, or you just want to tell me that you don't like this podcast. Please send me an email at theblackbibliophile@gmail.com. I love to read all your thoughts and recommendations. Also, if you guys would like to, I have a Patreon, and on that Patreon, I do upload exclusive episodes. I have a book club that goes on every month, and we choose one book a month, and I host a discussion, and there'll be questions and all kinds of fun stuff. And this month's book is pretty good, you guys. So if you want to know what this month's book is, you can become a patron for $1 and have fun with all the free exclusive content that I create. Well, it's not free, but you know what I mean. The exclusive content I create just for patrons. So yeah, thank you again for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.